This is a Yaggi tree. I traced our lineage back to Mr. Yaggi, who was born about 1495, way up to the top, and his wife, Mrs. Yaggi, born about 1499. Some things to note about our family tree. The spelling of the name. In Switzerland, Yaggi is not spelled with a Y, it's spelled with a J. Also, what the name means, Yaggi. Actually, Yaggi is like a familiar or a pet name for the first name, Jacob. So really, Yaggi is another way of saying Jacob. So we have a first name for a last name. 9 generations, all the Yaggis and all their wives, with 3 exceptions, were born in Lake. The 3 exceptions were Maria Hari, the wife of our ancestor Jacob, who came to the United States. She was born in Adeboden. And his mother, Jacob's mother, Margarita Buren, was also from Adeboden. Jacob's grandmother, who was the wife of Peter Yaggi, Maria Gabriella Boucher, she was from Freudville, Montheron, which is in the Canton Vaud, which is a French-speaking area. The thing that I find the most surprising about our tree is that when you look at this descendant chart and you think of all these Yaggis living in length, generation after generation, and having these large families and most likely farming, and then you come to the final generation at the bottom, and there's 3 children. And out of those 3 children, 2 of those children came to the United States. And not only did they both leave home, they both came to Knox Township in Columbiana County. So Columbiana County was a great place to come to. And how did our ancestors get here? Most likely they made their way to Paris, France. And then from there they would have taken a boat down the Seine River, and they would have ended up in Port La Havre, or La Havre, I'm not sure how you pronounce it. Before the Civil War, France had a thriving cloth-making industry in Alsace, so they sent ships frequently to the port of New Orleans to pick up cotton. Well, they figured out that if they could send people instead of empty ships to America, that they could make more money. So what they would do is they would send people in these cotton ships to the United States, and then they would drop people off at New York Harbor and exchange for new passengers, go down to New Orleans, pick up the cotton, and go back to France. Our ancestors arrived in Port New York, and when they arrived, the most likely way that they came to Ohio was they had a canal system at that time that basically went from the Hudson River of the East Coast all the way to Lake Erie. Once they got to Lake Erie, there was a canal system in Ohio. In 1832, a canal running from Cleveland to Portsmouth opened. This was called the Ohio and Erie Canal. It's the one to your right. A second canal, the Miami and Erie, stretched from Cleveland to Dayton and eventually to Toledo. Later, feeder canals, or those little off-sprouts, you see one on there, were added. The one shown in this picture is the Sandy and Beaver Canal, which was completed in the mid-1800s, approximately 1846 to 1848. And it ran from 40 miles south of Pittsburgh through Columbiana. This feeder canal was constructed after our relatives came, so they most likely didn't come. I know some people think they came this route, but most likely they came down the Ohio and Erie Canal, and they probably would have gotten off somewhere in Stark County and then traveled here by wagon. The first Yaggi to arrive then in Knox Township was our ancestor's sister, Maria. And she had a 3-year-old son with her, Christian. They arrived in the New York harbor from Le Havre, France, aboard the sailing ship, the Albany, on September 19, 1835. This is just blown up the passenger list, and you can see Maria up there, the 3rd one, and then Christian. And you notice they spell it J-A-G-G-Y. And that's one thing about our family. The name is spelled different almost every document you see. This is her passport for when she came in 1835. And I did mention that Maria did not come alone, but traveled with a child, age 3, named Christian. And the question of Maria and a son has kind of been debated in the family. But if you look at this original passport, there's no question. It says at the top, female, Maria Yaggi, and an infant, 2 persons. So she did travel to the United States with the son. The thing I love about these old documents, this is a passport. Back then they couldn't take pictures. Okay, so what they did is they described what you looked like. So this is the document document number, I think it says 287. And then along the side, if you read it, this is what they said about it. Age 30. Stature slender. Height 4 foot 9.5 inches. Hair dark brown. Forehead oval. Eyebrows brown. Eyes brown. Nose pointed. Mouth small. Wouldn't you hate to have a passport sitting in your Jaw round. Face narrow. Special marks none. Now there exists a second document for Maria's trip, and it's a doctor's report, and it is signed June 25th, 1835 by Dr. C.J. Sherm, and this is how it translates. In order to immigrate to America, these patients came to me in order to have a medical examination of their health. Maria Yaggi, Canton, Bern, age 33 years, single state, and Christian Yaggi, age 3 years. The most telling part of this document is the single state attached to Maria. She was obviously unmarried, and she had a child. There is a mystery associated with her child, Christian. You can trace him to a certain point, and then we don't know what happened to him. He just kind of disappears. This is Maria's Bible, her family Bible. And within the registry is a handwritten accounting of Maria's life. She, according to her own hand, she married John F. Clement, who was previously married to Magdalena J.C.S. Dode in May of 1820. And he and his first wife had 3 children, Sophia, Louis, and Francis. Magdalena died in 1830. On January 23, 1835, which is 4 months after she arrived in the United States, Maria and John were married. After their marriage, they had 5 children. Nowhere in the Bible, in the register, is the child Christian ever mentioned. His name is never registered anywhere. But we know he exists because we have his passport, and we've seen the documents that he came. In the 1850 census also, a Christian Clement who was born in France is listed as living in their household. But in the 1860 census, no reference is made to him, and that's like the last we see or hear of him. There is a family rumor, and in my book, I put the family rumors in. There's a number of them, which you can read about. And the family rumor is that there was a man named G. Rudolph Zender, and he was a hired man, and he lived with the Christian Yaggi family, which would have been Maria's nephew. And he lived there for the greater portion of his life. And the rumor is that this man, Zender, was actually the 3-year-old son, Christian. And Mary Beth, you can tell us that story.
He spoke German. He was walking down Buck Road, and our grandfather took me and hired him as a hired hand. But when you take the records and birthdays and all, it absolutely matches this child. And he lived in the Christian Yaggi home for many years.
For 40, 50 years.
You want to hear that back here?
Yeah, I said,
But how would you be walking down Buck Road from Switzerland just like that? It was prearranged, and I think it was family taking care of them.
yes.
We're talking about Rudy. Is that
Rudy,
right?
yep. For the full details of this rumor, you'll just have to buy the book. Okay, 2 years later, in 1837, Maria's brother Jacob, which is our direct descendant, made the same trip. He arrived aboard the Edwin in the port of New York on August 7th with his wife Maria Hari and their 2-year-old daughter Maria. This is the passenger list of the ship on which they came over, the Edwin. This is kind of a blown up of their name. There's Jacob, Maria. You can barely read it. Over to the right, it says he was a farmer. And his name is spelled Jacki on this document. It's spelled a little different. The first page you saw, if you go all the way to the right, it tells you his number of possessions. I just think this is so cool. When he came over, they had 5 trunks, bed, and bedding. They too came to Knox Township And they settled at 2455 Bandy Road, which is where John Robert Yaggi presently lives. At the time, there was no house here. But by 1860, they had purchased the land across the road. And it's that place where they first built their first home. And this was a log cabin. This is the first of 3 houses that was built on this land. The log cabin was eventually sold, and Mary Beth would probably tell you about that again, and moved to the corner of State Route 62 and 12th Street. And for all you old people, that's where Hippity Hop used to be before it burnt down. I remember that. So they moved it there, and the cabin no longer exists. It's gone. A second house was built at this location, and it was a 2-story log cabin. And it appears from the census records and from the family histories that I've gathered from people that these 2 houses were used extensively by all the adult children within the family, and they would basically live there while they set up their own homesteads. So when you look at these census records, Jacob Jr. lived there, and then the Manning lived there, and it's pretty confusing. This is the house that presently sits on the Jacob Yaggi property, and as I said, the 2 log buildings are gone. The property ended up being inherited by their eldest child, Maria, the 2-year-old girl that came from Switzerland, and she married Abraham Kristen. Abraham and Maria had 3 children, and their oldest child, Emma, married George Stahl, and it was they're the ones that built this house after they were married, and it still sits on that property to this day. This is the family group sheet for Jacob and Maria, and you can see in total they ended up having 9 children. All right, the first one was Maria, born in Switzerland. Next one was Jacob, Christian, Susanna, Emmanuel, Elizabeth, Henry F., Ferdinand, Emila S. And I have lots of dates and census records and obituaries, which I could bore you with all night. And if you want to know all these things, once again, buy the book. Buy the book. Okay. Tonight, I'd like to keep it simple and just show you some of the photographs of our ancestors that I have been given by family members and which are in the book. This first picture. This is Maria and her husband, Abraham Kristen. They first settled in Chambersburg. You just go down Knob School Road, and it's about 6 miles from North Georgetown and homeward. Abraham came to America from Twan, Switzerland at the age of 9, and he was a farmer and shoemaker. They had 3 children, Emma Elizabeth, Mary Esther, and Jacob Henry. This is Emma and Jacob Kristen. The eldest daughter, Emma, I've already mentioned. She inherited the original homestead, and with her husband, George Stahl, built the house that still stands there. George and Emma had 3 children, Ernest, who died at birth, Frank, who never married, and Henry Paul. The second daughter, Mary Esther, died at age 8 of diphtheria, and I have found no image of her. She is most likely buried at Bethel Cemetery, according to the family. Their youngest child, Jacob Henry, married Fanny Elizabeth Ramsire. This is a picture of Jacob and Fanny Kristen, and it was taken in 1942. Jacob Henry was a farmer and a carpenter. Jacob and Fanny had 2 children, Mervyn Henry and Mary Lucille. Mervyn and Florence are the parents of Betty Ring, Lois Tasker, and Robert Kristen. 2 of them are here tonight. Mervyn's sister, Lucille, married Lawrence Clark and was a school teacher. The second child of Maria and Jacob Hari Yaggi was Jacob. He never married, but was quite a businessman and was in a number of joint ventures with his younger brothers, Christian and Emmanuel. I've got a couple pictures of him. This is Jacob in front of the chief's house with a man whose last name is Gobley. And here's another picture of Jacob on a wagon. He never established his own homestead, but lived the bulk of his life on his parents' homestead on Bandy Road, a place where the log cabins were. The third child of Jacob Maria Hari Yaggi was Christian. And Christian was primarily a farmer and cheesemaker, but also was in business with Jacob and operated a sawmill and feed grocer. He had 360 acres of land. I know, even by today's standards. And built his family home at 24626 Buck Road. Now, in one of the earlier pictures, I showed you the picture of Jacob, and Jacob is standing in front of the cheese house. That cheese house is located at this farm, and you can actually see it is still standing. It's that little gray building back there. This is a picture of the Christian Yaggi family. Christian married Lucinda Hoffman, and they had 10 children, 9 of which are in this picture. This picture was taken after Christian's death on March 14, 1894, and you see the empty chair in this picture that was left for him. A few words about each. I know it's a large family, but just a few words. Top left, Jacob Franklin Yaggi. He was the third child and eldest son. He lived his entire life in Knox Township, and he farmed part of the farm owned by his father at 1422 Knox School Road. He married Anna Lucretia Grossman, and they had 2 children. His son Wilson continued to farm this acreage on Knox School Road. Top row, second to left, is Henry Carr Yaggi. He was their 5th child, and he went on to become a prominent doctor living in the Salem area. He was a general surgeon, and he started his home hospital, the Salem Clinic. He was also a founding physician of the Salem City Hospital. Top row, third from left, is John Sylvester Yaggi. He was their 4th child and married Clara May Helpbringer. They lived on the original Christian farming homestead, the one with the cheese house, on Buck Road, and he had 2 children, one of which continued to live on Buck Road, and that's John Jr., and a 2nd child, Henry Knapp, who died at the age of 5 from a ruptured appendix. Top row, far right, this is Lawrence Emanuel Yaggi. He was their 6th child. Lawrence went on to receive a law degree from Western Reserve Law School and became a corporate lawyer in Cleveland. He married Anna Laura Jones, and they had 3 children, 2 unnamed daughters that died at birth, and a son, Lawrence. Middle row, far right, Frances Jeanette Carr, or Jeanette as she was known. She was their 9th child. She was musically gifted and graduated from Mount Union Conservatory of Music. She had a music studio in downtown Alliance at one time. She married Robert Herman Carr. Herman was the business manager and secretary of the board of Mount Union College. He also served as the superintendent of the city hospital in Alliance. They had 2 children, Herman and Mary Elizabeth, or Mary Beth McFarland, as we call them. They're both here tonight. Middle row, middle. Lula Lucinda Bentz, I think I said it right, Bentz. She was their 8th child, and she married Carl Bentz, who was a farmer. Front row left, Elizabeth Henrietta Rook, who was their 2nd child. She graduated from Mount Union Music Conservatory, and she was also musically gifted. And she was an organist at this church when she was 13 years old. She married a fellow musician, Marcellus Orlando Rook, and they had 8 children. Of these 8 children, this is amazing, there were 2 MDs, 1 PhD, 3 Mount Union graduates, and then they had 2 children who did not survive until adulthood. Front row, far right, is Mary Catherine Weaver. She was their oldest child, and she became a school teacher and married another school teacher, Leslie Weaver. They moved to Nebraska after the marriage for 5 years, and then they returned to Knox Township, where he took up farming. They had 3 children, 2 daughters that died as infants, a son, Irvin, who became a principal of a school in Columbiana County, and later the superintendent of Columbiana Village Schools. The child not pictured is their 7th child. His name was Samuel Washington Yaggi. He died at the age of 4 months and 4 days. Before I leave the Christian Yaggi family, I'd like to show you one of my favorite photographs in the whole book. This is a picture of Betty Kristen and Henry Neff Yaggi. I mentioned above that John Sylvester Yaggi had 2 sons, one who died at age 5 from a ruptured appendix. This is a picture of him with his cousin Betty. Could you tell us the story, Betty?
Well, my aunt, Lucille, Mary Lucille, she was about 13 when she got a cancer. And I was up at my grandparents, and
She said, you're going to get your picture taken again. And I said, I'm not standing beside a boy. So I run upstairs and crawled into the bed. And she come after me and got a hold of my leg and jerked me out. So I got my picture taken.
I love that story. The picture is cute too. I'm so happy that she made you smile for the camera, because here it is, 80 years later. 80 years later, and we're looking at you as a child. It's amazing. Okay, back to Jacob and Maria Hard family. Their fourth child was Suzanne. She married Christian Reichenbach, who was from Switzerland. They did not have any children. And they built a house at 2195 Knox School Road. That's the house presently owned by Jim and Arlene Halen. In his obituary, it says that he dealt in stock dealing. Horses his favorite. In her obituary, it notes that she was the last surviving child of Jacob and Maria. The fifth child of Jacob and Maria was Emmanuel. This is the wedding picture of Emmanuel and Elvina Yaggi. He was a farmer, operated a sawmill, and was a brickmaker. He had a 103-acre farm at 1676 Knox School Road. He married Elvina, Odessa Practical, and they had 6 children. This is a picture of their oldest son. George was their eldest, and he was born in that log cabin on Bandy Road. He married Luella Wolf, and they had 1 daughter, Ethel Lucille Yaggi. The second child of Emmanuel and Elvina was named Franklin William, and he died at age 17 from malnutrition. I have no picture of him. According to his obituary, he got a sore throat that formed an abscess which prevented him from eating. And even though it eventually broke, he still was not able to take enough food in to save his life. And he died from malnutrition. The third child of Emmanuel and Elvina was Ada Cornella, who married John Gerber. This is a picture of Ada and John on their wedding day. They had 1 son, John Franklin Gerber, who was killed on July 10, 1944, at the Normandy landing during World War II. According to family accounts, the news of his death was so devastating that Ada had a stroke on the day of the memorial service at this church. She never fully recovered from it. The fourth child of Emmanuel and Elvina was Odessa Anna, who married Samuel Lewis Halen, or Lou as everyone called him. This is Lewis and Odessa. He was a farmer and a salesman for the Beloit Milling Company, and the couple had 3 sons. Is the Beloit Milling Company the same company that you're...
No. My father owned North Benton.
Okay.
And then when they sold it, when the dam was put in, he came to Beloit and worked for Guy Kopic at the Beloit Mill. And Louis Halen sold the farm and also came there.
Okay, so they worked at the same place.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought there was a connection
That
there.
was a Beloit. Yeah.
Okay. The fifth child of Emmanuel and Elvina was Irvin Emanuel. This is the wedding picture of Irvin Yaggi. He was actually married twice. His first wife was Ruth Isabella Scott, who died at the very young age of 25. They had 3 daughters before she died, Mary, Lois, and Agnes. My mother's Lois. He then married Delilah Gerard, and they had 4 more children. Leonard is first, and then Delilah, then Irvin, then Dale. And then there's Agnes, Lois, Donna, Ethel, and Mary. The 6th child of Emmanuel and Elvina was Elizabeth Lucille. She married Frank of Overstag, and they had 2 children. The 2 children were Elma and Eldest, who's sitting right here. And that's basically the Emmanuel side. Back to the children of Jacob and Maria Yaggi. Their 6th child and the last child to survive to adulthood was Elizabeth. I have no picture. She married John Beitler, who was from Switzerland, and they had 1 child, Emma Mary. This is a picture of John Beitler and his family. In this picture, John is in the back row, far right, and that's his daughter, Emma Mary, and her infant daughter, Marie Fern Harlan. The couple in the front row is believed to be John Beitler's parents. Emma married Ernest Thomas Harlan. And here's, I think this is their 50th wedding picture of Ernest and Emma married. This couple had 5 children, 3 girls and 2 boys. This is the 3 girls, Alta, Marie, and Tressa Harlan. I guess that was taken at their farm. And this is the 3 girls and the baby. If you can see him at the bottom, that's Frank Harlan. Their 4th child, John Thomas, died due to pneumonia following an illness with measles. The final 3 children of Jacob and Maria Hara Yaggi all died while young. They are Henry F., who died at age 1 year and 15 days. Ferdinand, who died at age 5 years, 8 months, and 9 days. And Amila S., who died at age 2 years, 1 month, and 21 days.